Hi, I am Jason, and I'm 53 years old, and I have prostate cancer that's metastasized to my spine. And normally on this podcast, we talk about it. Well, not today. Well, we are going to talk about it a little bit, but in a different way. So I'm going to read you a story I wrote today. So if you're not interested in listening to a story, move on. Um, but share you a little background on what this is and why I wrote it, how I wrote it. I got diagnosed June 27th of this year. It's 2023, and June 27th is when I got my biopsy results. I was sitting in a meeting at work, getting ready for a meeting at work, and opened my email because now with that My Chart and these other apps available for your medical stuff, I love that we get to see the results of things before our next medical visit, our doctor visit, medical visit. And that's what happened is the results came in, my biopsy results came in, and I was sitting at this meeting not expecting to have cancer. I was expecting, hey, this is an infection. Yeah, your PSA was high. We put you on an antibiotic. It went higher. But this is something else. You're too young to have cancer. And yeah, it turned out to be cancer. And then I got a lot of, well, you're still young. It's not going to be, we'll do surgery, we'll remove the tumor, and you're going to be good for a while. Maybe a little salvage radiation. But we did some tests just in case, some scans. And of course, as you know this story, you already know all this. Found out it had metastasized. So it's in my spine. It's in my L1 vertebrae. It's a 2 centimeter by 3 centimeter tumor. It's on the front part of the vertebrae, which I thought was weird. So it's facing inward or facing forward. Why does prostate cancer go to the bone? That's so weird. Anyway, from that moment, I started spinning out of control. And things, I write to process things. And that's kind of how this story happened is I took a lot of how I was feeling and poured it into the words, poured it into this idea, this progression. If you've read, so there's going to be a lot of metaphors in here. There's 3 parts to the story. Every part has at least one metaphor in it that's related to my cancer. One of them is very existential. And it goes through the gambit. That's a stupid word. Goes through the range of emotions I experienced after my diagnosis. The why me? Is this real? How did I get this? How do I change this? Am I stuck with this? Those kinds of things are what I was thinking, and those I just subconsciously channeled out into this story. So if you stuck around this long and you're interested, I appreciate that you're curious. I'm going to have a sip of coffee from my Cancer Sucks mug, and we'll get going. All right. The tumor. This is very personal, so I've shared it with family, but anyway, doesn't matter. All right, the tumor, part 1, the flight. I was on a flight home when the tumor chose me. I closed my laptop and looked out the window of the airplane. An hour ago, I was barely 50 feet above the runway and climbing at 1,000 feet per minute, thinking about a work proposal. My mind quickly drifted to wondering how the plane gets and stays in the air. Was it only because enough people learned about airplanes and thought they understood the physics involved in the wing shape? Does the plane rise from the tar because of a universal understanding of airflow over a curved surface? Or was there some kind of unspoken agreement to believe in things we can't fully grasp? Really, when you dig down with the lens, really dig down, zoom in down to the infinitesimal, there's a question at the heart of every pulse of a hint of the imaginary things that make up an atom. That question asks, what do we actually control? What do we have domain over? At what sub-level of existence do we manipulate our existence? That level of focus is where we actually have an opportunity to make real change. Every quanta question of a pulse of a chance of anything and everything exists based on what we think happens. The only reason the plane popped up off the blur of asphalt was because most of us expected it to. I didn't, but inside, deep in the innards of how I want my life to be, there's doubt growing. Why does the doubt take precedence? Well, because it does. Because that's how it goes. Entropy. The slow decline to a lower state, a common sinking. Is this not the nature of our very existence? The pull towards the low, the mundane, the brown noise. It's a force as real as the physics that lifted the plane, a force that had chosen me, marking me with a hidden, growing presence. I could feel like the plane wouldn't lift off the pavement, but that's not enough. I could explain it to the person next to me, and they could also begin to doubt. But the plane will still lift, still rise, still ascend into the imaginary space of molecules and atoms loosely flowing over the wings. I was too weak to reshape universal understandings. It kept tons of metal full of people pressed up against the earthly ceiling. My thoughts and doubts and lack of force were disappointing. I could withstand the rise into the air no more than my sheer will could wind back to that unknown moment, that first malignant transformation, unseen and unfelt, beyond my reach and immune to my consent. "Can I get you anything?" she smiled. "No, I'm good." I sat with my secret, my new reality, while the projection of all consciousness went on with the play. No, the person across the aisle wanted a ginger ale. Ginger was good for the stomach. Not the kind of flavored sugar water soda that the person was about to intake. Good ginger, real ginger. The root of the spice that was good for you. I opened my laptop back up. There was still an hour left on the flight, and I paid for the service, so... Google stated that ginger had been researched for its anti-cancer properties. It stated that it was an anti-inflammatory and an antioxidant. They wouldn't have any ginger on the plane. How much would I need to ingest to squash and dispel the creeping ambition now known to me? Could I blend an entire ginger root into a smoothie, add some cinnamon or lemon, and drink away my cancer? Well, the can of ginger across the aisle answered, quite rudely. Pfft. My fingers were numb on the keys. I wanted to look something up, but didn't. I looked across the aisle. The passengers sipped their 6 ounces of sugar. The 3 hollow circles of ice bounced around, fighting for access to something. But what? The next person asked for a coffee. I should have had a coffee. It was late and I was tired. I boarded the flight in Pasco, Washington at 9:18 p.m. We didn't take off on time. There was a delay due to weather. A late summer thunderstorm with high winds rolled through, and we stayed on the ground for a bit as a precaution. The plane had rocked a bit, but it was over quickly. By 10:05 p.m. we were in the air, my world blurring by as I disconnected from the ground. I really didn't want the plane to take off. I wanted it to stick to the ground, physics failing to complete the change in pressure, ignoring the breath of a centuries-old idea. I wanted the wings to flatten and cut through the air undisrupting. The short time on the ground in the storm was nice. I knew right where I was and why. Another person asked for coffee. She made her way up the aisle. I considered changing my answer, but she'd moved on. What would I do, raise my hand? I didn't read her name tag, not even sure she had one. Seems unsafe anymore to wear your name on your uniform. Too many bad people out there making bad decisions and taking advantage of information and situations. "Hey, you" was clearly rude. Stewardess didn't seem right either. Labeling was a risky puddle of mud. I wouldn't like someone out calling out, "Hey, cancer guy." Could I feel it? Should I even be sitting? The plane answered with some bumps. The stewardess steadied herself on the seat back, 4 in front of me. I shouldn't have coffee anyway. There wasn't much time left on this flight, and I was too big of a guy to try and use the lavatory. I was supposed to be preparing, writing some notes, reviewing the plan. I opened my laptop up and Googled coffee and cancer. I found a 2013 article that went against 4 other articles. How do you figure out the truth in all these studies? The seatbelt light came on. The plane hit some more bumps. A voice said they were suspending drink service. I stowed my laptop and looked out the window, still black. In the distance, near the horizon, scattered lights gradually merged. An oasis of electrons emitting various types of luminescence, burning up resources to support a lifestyle of thriving in the desert at night. People should be asleep. I should be asleep. Does the cancer grow the same if I'm awake or asleep? Does it wait until I'm asleep, monitoring my eyes and my brain activity, waiting to continue its growth, spreading its malignancy into my bloodstream, looking for issues and weaknesses within my structure, hoping to secure a new spot for its new own oasis? Sir, can you put your seat up? The drink cart was gone, and she was going through the cabin, getting ready for the landing, making sure seats were upright, trays were stowed, electronic devices were turned off, and all items stowed under the seats in front of everyone, unless you were in a front row facing a wall, because then it apparently didn't matter. I smiled, nodded, and complied. Sitting straight upright was a bit uncomfortable. There was an odd pressure down there. That and some lower back pain is what sent me to see my doctor several months ago. I'd been riding a stationary bike to shed some post-COVID weight and assumed that was the issue. When you give your doctor the reason for the thing you want them to diagnose, they blow it right back at you. It's probably the bike and working out, she'd said. I'll give you an antibiotic. Well, the antibiotic didn't work. I'll order you a PSA test. It measures levels of prostate-specific antigens in your blood. It'll help us verify it's not prostate cancer. It's probably the bike and other activities. She also strongly recommended I see a nutritionist because I'm fat. So I did. The PSA came back above the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey's threshold of 3.5 for a man my age. Also, it was above the VA's general threshold of 4.0, so back in I went. She referred me out to a urologist, and he did his thing with his finger while I stared at a wall. There was a dried drop of blood on the wall just a foot above the floor. A single brownish drop. There wasn't a splatter or a pattern. Oh, you could see where the wall below and to the right of it had been wiped clean. They missed a spot. That spot. Do you feel me pressing down? He asked. I felt his finger at the door, but that was it. I felt no other pressure than the forced expansion of a knuckle choking open my starfish mouth. I told him so. Really? He said. I'm pressing down on your prostate pretty hard. I felt nothing but the erosion of my dignity slipping out and dripping down my leg, and a creeping sensation that this wouldn't be something I looked back on and laughed about. In different words, I told him so. That violation led to a biopsy, which reset my understanding of what a violation means. Then I packed for my trip, ironed out some wrinkles in my proposal, finished creating the presentation, and boarded the flight. And now we were landing. A voice said, "Welcome to Phoenix, folks. The time here is 12:11 a.m., and it's currently 86 degrees. Though it's midnight, welcome to the Valley of the Sun." Part 2, Resonance. Time for another scan, an MRI. My veins are again hard to find, recessed and withdrawn. Week after week of pokes and sticks, they hide and sink deeper into my flesh. Does a fish feel pain? Did they ever figure that out? Maybe, like a fish, my veins are more conscious of my situation than I think. I always watch the needle go in, feel the prick, and watch it tear its hole and disappear into the flesh. Over the weeks, there's been so many stabs, and now my veins recoil and disappear. One visit had the technician, if that's the right title, technician? One visit had them try twice in my right arm, twice in my left arm, and we finally went for the hand. The next visit, I said we should just put the IV in my left hand. They didn't want to and stuck both arms before going for the hand. My arms were swollen and colored and bruised from week after week of tests and injections so they could explore my insides, lit up for the machines with technetium-99, fluorine-18, and gadolinium. What music do you like? Well, that was unexpected. I didn't get to listen to music on any of the other scans, including the 35-minute-long scan. I don't need any. I'm good. We walked to a locker. Any metal in your pockets? No. I had my wallet, my pocket knife, and phone in a leather satchel bag I'd made. I hated the ritual of emptying my pockets in front of strangers, showing them what I need to have with me every day, the things I'm attached to that go with me everywhere. I put my bag in the locker. You came prepared. I nodded. At this point, they usually ask if I need to use the restroom. Instead, we walked over some yellow and black tape on the floor and passed a red flashing light into a room with the tube. A quick mental check of my bladder indicated I should be okay. All right, we're going to have you lay on the table, head at the far end. We'll give you headphones, so what do you like to listen to? The word melancholy formed in my head. I thought about it and said, milky chance. That would get me through this, and there's a good chance they wouldn't have it or find it, and I'd be able to lay there in silence, which I preferred. Without the music, I'd replay the presentation at the Phoenix work proposal, and I'd already done that 1,000 times, maybe even 1,003 times. The proposal presentation was done. It was a few weeks ago now, and I was back in the Tri-Cities. The return flight did not provide any new life-altering news. I did get some appointments scheduled. Lots of people called me now. The scheduling staff, the VA, someone I don't know called a cancer coach or something, my urologist, my oncologist, my radiation oncologist, and of course family and friends. So many people. I'm not likely to ever forget that I have cancer. Anyway, I'm on the table wearing headphones, ready to hold still against the whirring and buzzing of the beige tube about to swallow me, eating my body with its energy as it slices images from my soul. The technician goes to another room. There's life in the headphones, and his voice comes through, indicating we're about to start. Yeah, the volume's fine, I reply. The music starts, the milky chance beat, the ooh-ooh, the voice of someone trying, but just not trying hard enough. He sounded like someone very much accepting of who he was, and his level of effort towards life, and his sound came across with an attitude of, this is as good as it gets. You know he'll never howl out vocals or test his range, and he's okay with that. And he doesn't care if people don't like it, because it's his beat and his voice, and what you hear is all the energy he's going to put into it, because he isn't exactly sad, but he doesn't want to be happy either, and maybe there's some love mixed in, but it's always out of reach, or he's running from it, and he's okay with all of that for some reason, I am as well. I waited to be swallowed by the machine, fed into the tube of heat and noise. The ceiling in the room gave way to a milky-covered skylight above the machine. I wish I could see the sky. Was this an aesthetic decision, or did the magnets that will be spinning around my body interfere with or were interfered by the light? I'll look that up later. Actually, I won't, but right now I think I will. The belt feed conveyor moves me halfway into the machine. There's an LCD display on the machine with a number in millimeters, and it counts down as I moved in, arms strapped, legs supported by a cushion, milky chance telling me to save my tears and that there will be another rainy day. The ceiling above the machine looked a bit lower than a normal ceiling. Above the machine, a big rectangle opened up, and the ceiling moved up about 1.5 feet to a horizontal glass window. Above that, the size of an entire room, was an open space. Below the opaque white plastic roof, a large barn shape that allowed leaves and dirt and rain to slide off and not slowly build up on its surface, blocking light, blocking my view. It was all actually very well designed. The machine started eating, noisily. The humming vibration felt good and matched the music. There was no blood spot. I knew I could not close my eyes, though. I had to face this, eyes open, or my body would relax too much and I'd have an involuntary twitch or shift or forget that I had to remain as still as possible. So at the skylight I stared while the machine mapped out my growth, opened up my future as slices to be compiled and studied. There was something above the glass, a layer of fine mesh like a fine wire screen, holes slightly larger than a screen door. Well, that makes sense. Probably a Faraday shield so the energy can't get out and damage the sky or something. There were even finer strands of more random patterns along the braces of the window, between the mesh and the glass. Occasionally, a tiny dark thing lay along an intersection of strands, a dot with little curled legs. Further out, more directly above my head, something fluttered on one of the fine strands, like a gnat, something smaller than a gnat even, and not quite a gnat. It had a long, thin body like a tiny baby dragonfly. It was so small. Occasionally it fluttered. Struggled. It was caught on the web. I watched the spider sitting there, presumably monitoring the activity. How long would it let its meal struggle? How often did it eat? The meal fluttered a bit again with milky effort. The spider sat. A little further past was another spider, laying in the same way. Was each waiting for the other, giving one another a chance at what fell into the pantry? The meal fluttered. There was no wind or breeze. The only movement was when the gnat thing gave a half-assed effort, trying to break free. The spiders sat. their legs curled in a familiar way. Some way I should know. Some way I've seen. They didn't move. They weren't monitoring. Their legs weren't ready and on the trigger thread. Their legs curled to the sky in surrender, their bodies half-dried husks. The web exists and continues its mission, and the gnat is trapped, while its creator lay dead. My own monitoring machine was very much alive and pulled me in another couple centimeters. I found a spot of chipped paint on the long swallowing curve of the machine and stared at that for a while. Milky chants sang about going back to a cocoon, something about a blackened afternoon. Did cancer have a color? Was it black? Gray? If this machine never looked inside me and my blood was never tested, would the cancer even exist? Observer theory indicates that things exist based on an observer. Who or what decided to observe a cancer within me? What color did they assign it? Months and months ago, I felt off. I felt some issues internally, but didn't know what they were. Like my doctor first said, they were likely due to riding the bike and exercising. That made sense, and I believed it, and my doctor believed it. Why did I not have the power to collapse the probability to sore muscles? What were all the probabilities, the possibilities? Why cancer? Everything that exists is made up of infinite number of clouds of chances that each, in turn, collapsed into existence because they were altered, changed, realized by an observer. What energy does an observer have? Was it the noticing of the cloud that changed it, or was a will pushed into all the clouds that nudged them into existence? Well, however it happened, that chain of cloud collapsing has led to this moment, with a growth of collapsed clouds that were determined to be malignant in nature. The music stopped. I had closed my eyes, and the voice came over the headphones and said that the machine was registering excessive movement. I swallowed and opened my eyes and refocused on the glass, the web, the gnat, the flutter, the struggle against the dead web. Part 3. The Ocean. It was 18:05 in military time, 6:05 p.m. in the afternoon on a Sunday, and I was working on my Jeep. I put the last socket and the ratchet back in the toolbox and snapped the lid closed. I stared at the rags on the sand and dirt-covered stain of oil, reminded me of exactly where I dropped the oil filter. I needed to get that cleaned up. I was able to upright the filter as soon as it hit the driveway, but between the oil that spilled from the filter and the residual oil that drained from the block, a decent-sized film of black, translucent edges thinned itself, finding more and more driveway to fuse with and stain. It still took a little time to get some dirt and sand on it to help absorb the black goo, but I got it covered. Then I threw rags on it. Now I'm cleaning it up before I get the brittle bare-bone structure down off the jack stands, putting its feet back on the ground. Rubbing the dirt and sand with the rags was more work on my back than I thought. I had to take a break. Cleaning up oil was a strange experience. You rubbed at it, getting it to absorb into the dirt and sand and rags, which also rubbed it into the driveway. In cleaning up the oil, I was imprinting the stain that would be there possibly forever. There's some good soaps out there for oil stains. That and a pressure washer can do some wonders, but it will always be there. No amount of rubbing and soaping and washing will ever remove the spot where the oil filter fell due to my weakness, my momentary loss of grip. I keep an old broom and dustpan in the garage right next to the cat litter I keep on hand for oil spills. Oh yeah, cat litter. I got the rags and dirt and sand swept up, then put some cat litter on the stain. I was wearing old sneakers, so I stood on the stain and ground the cat litter into the driveway, breaking up the granules into particles and the particles into dust, grinding it all into the stain in the driveway, hoping some of the stain would relent and allow itself to be picked up and absorbed by the litter and swept away by the broom and carried off by the dustpan. All done, I sat down on the driveway next to the discolored reminder of my lapse of strength. It's strange what reminders we carry with us and how there will someday be someone here who looks at this stain and judges the entire house by it, judging the person that left it. We all do that. There's an unsaid truth among men when looking at an oil stain, a self-acknowledged moment when they say to themselves they wouldn't have dropped the oil filter. They would have cleaned it up faster. But there are also a few, usually old-timers, that better understand and will meet an old oil stain with a wink, knowing that someone there did things and worked on things, and that that person had rough hands with dark stains highlighting the creases and scars. The day felt good, but I was tired. I took a couple deep breaths and put the jack back under the bumper and ratcheted the Jeep up a couple inches off the jack stands. She groaned a bit. It had been up on the jack stands for a week. Cumulatively, she's been resting weight off her shoes for longer than a week. It's been through some stuff. Sometimes I wonder if the creaking and groaning is telling me it's ready to remain on the jack stands. Anyway, what used to take me an afternoon now took longer. The first day last week, I was able to get it jacked up on the stands, get the wheels off, and do the right front brakes. With long breaks every so often, that was 5 hours of work. I fell asleep in the driveway for a bit, thinking I was just going to rest before tackling the left front brakes. And that was the end of the first day. The next day, I started on the left front brakes. The first caliper bolt came out okay, but the lower 13mm caliper bolt started spinning in place and wouldn't back out. I had to get a crescent wrench to hold it in place so I could get it out. It took a while, and when I finally got it to back out, allowing the caliper to lift off the rotor, the threads of that lower bolt were damaged. I almost had to will the bolt out. Maybe I did. Maybe that's what got it out, though damaged. Maybe it was more personal will than it was crescent wrench. I don't know. I thought about getting the thread chaser out to clean it up and reuse the bolt, so I went in search of my tap and die kit. By the time I'd moved enough stuff to get it out, I sat with it on my lap, catching my breath. The metal box was covered in a blue blistered paint with rust spots near the edges. I ran my hand over the surface, catching the crusty, stained, half-peeled label. It tore and the loose half fell away. Rested, I put the thread fixing kit in the giveaway pile on the side of the garage, behind the sign that was prepared for the weekend curb giveaway. The pile was getting bigger. That's okay. I ordered a replacement bolt from the auto shop and called it a day. The next day, I finished the left front brakes and started the back brakes. The day after that, I finished the back brakes and bled all the brakes. It went like that each day. Replaced the air filter. Checked the transmission fluid. Made sure the stupid air-operated front axle shift motor wasn't jammed up again. Greased all the grease points and replaced the fan belt just in case. Then it was today, and I changed the oil, leaving the stain. Tomorrow, I'll move this pile of stuff I used to think was important to the curb. Other people that think they need stuff will stop and browse and pick through my old hobbies and distractions, the things that kept me from working on my Jeep, from getting ready for a trip. In there, someone will find a treasure, load it into their car or truck, and drive off. They'll have added to their own pile of things they think are important. What's important to me right now is that I was able to do the work on my Jeep, my old workhorse, my old friend, and that we'll be able to drive to the ocean. It's been a while since I went to the beach, the coast, just to sit there and look out at the waves. I like the thought of walking barefoot in the cold, wet sand again, watching for the clam or oyster breathing holes. Things are never as good as we remember them or think they will be, but I'm letting my imagination get carried away, and I'm good with it. I like the thought of what it could be like, how it might be the perfect day and how I'll be the only one there and there will only be a mild breeze, but the waves will still be gorgeously epic and strong, pounding the sand into submission, the sand laying there surrendered and packed in and dense, the waves unknowingly hammering the thing they work against into a wall of bedrock of compressed minerals and memories. There's a lot of ocean along the borders of Washington and Oregon. I've never really been to a lighthouse. A quick search showed me that Cape Disappointment had the oldest lighthouse on the west coast, so that was it. That's where I'm headed. Well, there's the other reason, but that doesn't matter just yet. What will matter is making the trip, seeing the lighthouse. The Jeep back on the pavement, fire it up, let the clean oil run through its passages, chasing out the old oil. But it never really leaves. You change the oil, but it never gets all the oil. When the fresh oil gets pumped through the heads and washes the cylinders, all the old oil films clinging to old surfaces gets mixed in, and the new oil is suddenly tainted. You could run the engine for a while and then immediately do another oil change, and all you're ever doing is diluting the old oil. The old molecules linger, fewer, but always there. I'll head out in 2 days. Tonight, I'm going to write and rest. Tomorrow, I'll move the stuff to the curb, make one last trip to the grocery store, then write some more and rest some more. The next day, Tuesday, I'll head out towards Yakima. I want to make a scenic route, so I'll be going on the 12, crossing the Cascades just north of Mount St. Helens. I have a sleeping bag packed. There's a couple of campgrounds along the way if I get tired. I'm not in a hurry, so I plan to stop and look at every veiny leaf fallen and blown onto the shoulder, waiting to be stirred up with every non-looker speeding past on their way to do nothing important while they ignore the crusty shell of a used and discarded cocoon resting on the line where asphalt and dirt meet. I've got my camera loaded. I'll take some pictures. For now, it's time to write, to capture words to be ready, to be read by who knows who someday. The end. Well, if you stuck around that long, if you stuck around this long and got to the end, you see there's, I used a lot of metaphors for the cancer. I talk a lot about so the idea of why me, what did I do wrong that caused the cancer, right? Was it something I did, something I thought, something I felt? Because it's it's unnerving. I don't like knowing I have cancer and not knowing how I got it. And this story helped me think through that, talk through that, and just get a better understanding of what am I going to do going forward, which is, how that breaks into three parts: the past, the present, and then the future, the flight, the diagnosis, and then the ocean, the diagnosis being resonance. And there's some existential questions in there. There's a lot of comparisons. No matter what we do to get this cancer out of my body, no pressure washing, scrubbing, cleaning, cat litter, whatever we do, there's always going to be this cloud of probability that now exists and is more likely to happen again. There's just always going to be some residual stain. I mean, I'm now forever, even if I'm cured. Let's say my radiation treatment and my hormone therapy, the ADT and the blockers, cure me. Even though there's a tiny chance that I may be cured, I will always be stained with the fact that I have cancer, forever altered. There's a degradation of my L1 vertebrae. It's going to someday fracture and collapse under my own weight because I'm obese. For those of you that don't know, I mean, when you look at me, I'm heavy, but you don't think, oh yeah, he's 380 pounds. But that's how much I weighed at the start of my journey. I'm 6'4", and I started in June. The end of June, I weighed 380 pounds. I'm down to 350. My weight loss has started slowing down quite a bit, and I think I understand why. It has to do with the prednisone, because it raises my cortisol. You take prednisone when you take Zytiga, because the Zytiga, which blocks your pituitary gland function, which includes things like your stress hormone, cortisol. And so too much cortisol is a bad thing. Not enough is also a bad thing. So I take prednisone because one of the side effects of prednisone is it raises your cortisol levels. I'm wondering if my cortisol levels were naturally high or excessively high because of work or whatever anyway. And so I'm going to talk to my doctor about maybe dialing my prednisone down a little bit. Because when I was not taking, because for a while early in treatment, I didn't understand the role prednisone had, and I was only doing one of my 2 5-milligram pills a day, and I was losing weight. And then I talked to my medical oncologist, and they're like, no, you need to take both. So I started taking both, and then my appetite came back like just voraciously. And I'm still eating the same. I haven't changed how I eat. I'm just hungrier all the time now. But even eating the same and exercising the same, so no change in my diet and no change in my activity level. And I started putting weight on again. Well, it's my weight loss stopped. And now it's started to creep up a pound and then another pound. So I'm going to see if I can get my cortisol bumped down to half doses. Anyway, I didn't mean to ramble about that. This is about the story. So also, there's a bonus. If you stayed this long, there's an update on me and my treatment and what I'm thinking about. So, yeah, this story is a little emotional for me, but I wanted to take a moment and share it with you. And if you're going through this, I'm sure there's pieces and parts of that you'll be like, I know what you mean. And if you're not going through this, of course, hopefully it's still a nice story. But yeah, let's call it there for this episode. Yeah. Take care. Thank you for listening. I love you all.